McCormick, and former special assistant to the U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Milstein.
All right, CPAC. It's great to be back at CPAC 2024.
All right.
And it's a tremendous honor to be here with Dave McCormick, who is running for Senate in Pennsylvania. It's a very, very important Senate seat that we need to pick up to regain the Senate in this upcoming election. And Dave, I want to start off. Please tell us why you decided to run for Senate. I know you had told me previously that as a combat veteran, as someone who has served our country in uniform, the disastrous withdrawal of Afghanistan was one of the prime reasons why you decided to run.
Yeah, well, thanks, David. Thanks for doing this. I decided to run in 2022 because I watched what happened in Afghanistan and the incompetence of it, the weakness. I think sent a message around the world that America was weak and our leadership was weak. And I jumped into the race because I was worried about the direction of our country. And I'm running again in 2024 because I think the America we know is slipping away. And it's unrecognizable economically, in military terms, spiritually, the challenges around the world we see everywhere. And we need leadership that's going to shake things up and take America back. And that's why I'm running. I'm honored to do it, and I'm in the ring.
One of the biggest and most disastrous policies of the Biden administration is facilitating the open borders. What we're seeing on the southern border and even the northern border, it's not just over 8 million illegal immigrants who are coming into the country. It's also people who are coming from China, from Russia, from the Middle East, people who aren't even being vetted. We've talked about how border security is very much national security. Yep. Why is this one of the biggest reasons why you've also decided to run and one of your biggest priorities when you get to the United States Senate?
Well, I hear this everywhere on the campaign trail in Pennsylvania. And if you think about the national security crisis we're experiencing, 160 people apprehended that were in the terrorist watch list. It took 13 to take down the towers in 9/11. But it's far more than that. It is the scourge of fentanyl, which is destroying our communities. I went to the border in 2022. I literally was with the Border Patrol. You could look up on the other side of the Rio Grande, and they would point to the cartel members up in the hedgerows pushing people across. And that fentanyl takes about 48 hours, and the cartels have it in northeastern Pennsylvania. Luzerne County is the worst county per capita in the country for fentanyl deaths. So this is a crisis of epic proportion. 5,000 Pennsylvanians last year, 106,000 Americans. This is a national security crisis. And just think about it this way. If you were an adversary and you were sitting in Beijing, or you were sitting in Tehran, or you were sitting in Moscow, and you were saying, how do we really mess with America? You'd invent something called fentanyl. You'd ship its ingredients to Mexico. You'd manufacture it. You'd send it across the border. And you'd have it undermine and destroy our communities across America and kill Americans. That's what's happening, and we need to treat it as the war that it is, including not just shutting down the border and doing the actions that we should have done from day one under the Biden administration. He's failed us miserably. But I also think we should consider using military force to go after those cartels. This is a war, and we need to treat it as such.
And you're running to politically defeat current Senator Bob Casey. What is his record on this?
Yeah, Bob Casey's record in general is a man of inaction. In arguably the most consequential state in the country. This is where the country was born. This is the battleground state that's going to determine the presidency, right? Pennsylvania. In that Pennsylvania, we have a senator that has had no leadership, not done a single thing from a legislative standpoint in 3 terms. But more than that, he's voted with Biden 98% of the time. 98% of the time. So when you look at inflation, when you look at a wide open border, when you look at the weakness that we've shown abroad, when you look at legislation proposing biological males to be able to compete against my 6 daughters in school with biological females, Bob Casey's been there every step of the way, and that's how to step with Pennsylvanians, and that's why I'm going to win. and that's why we're going to win in 2024.
So one of the many issues that is certainly near and dear to my heart, and I think actually countless Americans, is what's going on in Israel and the importance of America to unequivocally support Israel. As everyone knows, on October 7th, Israel suffered the deadliest and most heinous atrocities that were committed against Jews since the Holocaust. And Hamas, which is backed by Iran, was able to, unfortunately, massacre, rape, burn alive, decapitate, the worst evil you can possibly imagine, over 1,200 innocent people. They kidnapped barbarically over 200 people. By the way, it's not just Israelis. This was not just an attack on Israel. It was an attack on America. It was an attack on Western civilization. There were countless Americans who were massacred, and there also were a number of Americans who were kidnapped, and there still are over 6 Americans that are being held hostage by Hamas. Dave, you did something that I will always forever appreciate, and I think countless Americans will, which is you and your wife, Dina, actually chose on your own to go to Israel, I think last month, so you could see firsthand what took place. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was really heartbreaking in every way. I thought President Trump had made such enormous strides with Israel by moving the embassy to Jerusalem, the Abraham Accords, which my wife had the honor of being part of that team that was able to achieve what it was a monumental achievement in the Middle East. And we wanted to go to see for ourselves what had happened and to show solidarity with the people of Israel. And we landed and went to Kfar Aza, one of the communities, 800 members of that community, 100 of them were massacred on that day. You walk through the streets, you see the bullet holes, you see the blood on the furniture in the homes. There's a safe room where a young woman and her boyfriend were texting back and forth with her father before they were slaughtered. Families burned. Parents killed in front of their children. People decapitated. You can't believe the level of evil. We met with a young woman who was at the music festival that day and was in one of the bomb shelters, was shot through the knee and fell down. Her friends fell on top of her. They were killed, and the terrorists thought that she was dead. That's how she survived. We met with hostage families. We watched this horrible video taken from the body cams of the terrorists. And we met with the IDF and spent time with them as they talked about prosecuting the war. And the takeaway was threefold. Number one, you can't imagine this level of evil in the world. It is beyond anything. You think about it, but when you see it, you can't imagine the evil that exists that would do such a thing. And that evil is not just directed to Israel. That's directed against the West. That's directed against all of us. And so it absolutely has to be eradicated. Hamas has to be eradicated. And that evil has to be combated. The second thing is we need to support Israel completely in its need to do that. Imagine if forces came across the border terrorists came across the border from Mexico and killed 1,200 Texans. Imagine what we would be doing in response to that. We need to give Israel our full-throated support. I have complete confidence they will prosecute this in a way that is both morally right and also fulfilling its obligation to ensure that people want to slit their throats don't sleep 600 meters across the border. And the third thing, which we can't turn away from, is the original sin. The original sin is Iran. Iran is the original sin. This isn't just Hamas. This is Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, the Houthis. This is all part of a terrorist network that's being underwritten by the $100 billion of resources that Obama, Biden, and a senator named Bob Casey, who was the deciding vote, has put in place. And so Iran has to be stopped. Iran has to be strangled. And we have to confront this evil because it's coming after us.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of press reports, as everyone knows, very left-wing, very anti-Israel, very, in many respects, very anti-American, that wrongly try to slander Israel and how it's prosecuting this war. But it's very important for everybody to know, and I'm sure you know this, you've seen it, there may be no other country in the world besides America that goes to such unprecedented lengths to only target the bad guys and to avoid civilian casualties. You're talking about
Yeah.
You're talking about an enemy, a ruthless enemy, again, backed by Iran, the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world, that deliberately hides among civilians, in hospitals, in schools, in mosques, firing at Israel from civilian areas, both of which is a double war crime. And then obviously it's a triple war crime when you also attack Israeli civilians. But what are some of the things you learned over there about?
I want to say, I was a West Point graduate. I served in Iraq. I was in the 82nd Airborne Division. The toughest mission is this urban warfare where you're rooting out these terrorists block by block, street by street, building by building, room by room. And imagine that mission, and then imagine a whole city underneath the ground of equal complexity. This is an incredibly, I see an 82nd Airborne patch there. I love it. All right, 82nd, good job. So this is a horribly difficult mission. And it's going to take time. It needs to be done with a lot of care, and the Israeli forces are doing that. We sat with IDF soldiers. They talked to us and showed us the targeting, the double authentication they go in to make sure their drones and their missiles are targeting only the terrorists. There's great care being taken. But remember what's happening. We have a terrorist group that is completely integrating itself into the civilian population. We have terrorists in Hamas that are blocking humanitarian aid going to women and children. We have terrorists that are blocking those humanitarian corridors for people to get out of these areas. So this lies at the feet of Hamas in terms of the terrible crisis that we're experiencing, and I have every confidence that Israeli forces are prosecuting that with both effectiveness and honor.
One of the many disastrous consequences of October 7th is the rise of, or the further rise, I should say, of anti-Semitism that we've seen across the world. We've seen it on our streets in terms of vandalism against Jewish-owned businesses. We've seen reprehensible pro-Hamas demonstrations. We've seen anti-Semitic discrimination targeting Jewish students on campuses. What has Bob Casey done on any of these issues? And isn't it time that we actually bring real accountability to our college universities to defund them, to revoke their tax-exempt status, if they're not even protecting Jewish students and fighting anti-Semitism?
Yeah, what happened on campuses after October 7th is emblematic of a spiritual decline, really across America. The recognition of right versus wrong, the moral clarity, the idea that America is an exceptional nation that we need to fight to defend individual freedom. So this is emblematic of a huge problem where the left has really defined our society in terms of the oppressed and the oppressors. And that finds its way into everything. And you say to yourself, how could it be? How could we see our kids, Jewish children staying in their room, Jewish kids at colleges staying in their rooms because they're fearing their safety? How could that be? He said, how could that happen? And then you watch the testimony of those three presidents, and you say, oh, that's how it happened. That's how it happened. We have leaders, and Bob Casey is a perfect example of this, who won't stand up, who won't say the difference between right and wrong, who won't lead and push back against these progressive ideologies that are taking our country over a cliff. And so, yeah, we need to shake things up in a dramatic way, and that's what I would do in Washington. On universities, there's enormous benefits that come with the tax exemption they get on these endowments. Billions of dollars. They shouldn't get that if they're not going to fulfill a basic principle of we're not trying to create safe places. We're trying to create places where everybody can speak and feel safe. Second, they get enormous federal dollars, R&D dollars, to conduct research. It's a huge part of what makes these universities. That should be predicated on our universities carrying out a true meritocracy of ideas, as opposed to the crazy lefty stuff we're seeing today. So I think we need leaders who are going to push on that. Bob Casey's been the exact opposite. When Liz McGill, the president of Penn, showed her lapses of leadership, I was one of the first people that said, fire. We got to fire. Bob Casey waited, and said, well, we probably need to make a change at some point. That's what you get with Bob Casey. My mom's from Punxsutawney, and I say on the campaign trail, Bob reminds me of Punxsutawney in that he's like Punxsutawney Phil. He only pokes his head out of his hole once every 6 years. And that's what's happening right now with Punxsutawney Bob.
So, in the few minutes we have remaining, I actually want to ask you one or two questions about, I think, the biggest national security, geopolitical, economic threat that this country faces, which comes from China and the CCP. I know that this is a big issue. It's a big issue for Pennsylvanians, but it's also a big issue for our country. What do you think we should be doing about China?
Well, I think the best thing we can do to ensure our adversaries aren't testing us and challenging us is to show strength. And we have a president in Joe Biden that's showing weakness. We've lost deterrence. We had deterrence under President Trump. We had a leader where people said, okay, we better be careful about messing with the United States. We're going to show what we're going to get. Deterrence is having ability, it's having will, and it's keeping them guessing. Biden has lost the capability, he hasn't shown the will, and he does the opposite. He forecasts exactly what he's going to do. And that's our biggest problem. That's why we're being tested. That's why we're being tested in Europe with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That's why we're being tested by China. That's why we're being tested by Iran. It's because they perceive weakness. Go to the playground. We all grew up on it. If the bully perceives weakness, they're going to push. They're going to punch. So we got to get strength. That's number one. With China, we've been weak for too long. We've had 20 years, most of them bipartisan, of hoping that China would come around. And what happened with President Xi is they made their motivations clear. Become a techno-authoritarian leader of the world, the new superpower of the world at America's expense. And so I've laid out a very clear path, which is we need to up the ante. Bob Casey's not done this. We need to up the ante. We need to ban China's extra protections it gets under permanent normal trade relations and the World Trade Organization. They haven't played by the rules, right? They haven't played by the rules. We need to get China thrown out of the World Health Organization, right? We don't know. I mean, can you believe we still don't know the origins of COVID? Here we are, millions of people killed, trillions of dollars, and China's not been transparent at all of what happened in Wuhan, right? Can you believe that China's strategically buying farmland across America? We should ban that. We should stop letting companies invest in China in ways that supports the PLA, in ways that supports the Communist Party. We need to show leadership and show China that there are consequences for bad behavior, and we need to reduce our dependency on China, and that's what I'll do as a senator on the first day.
Well, I think we're about finished. So thank you, CPAC, for having us. And obviously, please visit Dave's website, if I may say on my personal note, to help support him, because we really have to retake the Senate, and Pennsylvania is ground zero for that.
DaveMcCormickPA.com. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, buddy. Of course. Thank you.